Watch this.
Decades of service, then a letter from the governor's office removing an Idaho Human Rights Commissioner from her post. She says it's her views that got her position taken away. Whether it's the start of the journey or it's the last stop before you drive home, the Boise Airport has been there for travelers for 100 years.
It's not just about getting from point A to point B.
And there's more history to be made as future projects are in the works to keep up with the growth. A repeal of a 100-year-old rule in the state constitution will not be on the ballot. A bill that would have asked Idaho voters to repeal the Blaine Amendment failed today in the Idaho House of Representatives. Justin Corr joining us now after keeping an eye on this one. It's been a big one.
Yeah, a real big one and a big question. Hunter, the Blaine Amendment has been a part of the Idaho Constitution since Idaho became a state. It bans public money from being used for religious purposes, like, say, private religious schools. House Joint Resolution 7 would have put a question on your November ballot asking voters if you wanted to repeal the Blaine Amendment. This is the second time in 3 years something like this has been tried, and again, it failed. The bill sponsored Representative Elaine Price says the Blaine Amendment is religious discrimination. She says withholding funds offered to religious schools is unconstitutional. She cited a lawsuit where a church was actually denied access to a public school facility, but they sued and won. Price also said HJR 7 would not necessarily fund any religious school. It would just open the door to it. She also stressed again that this resolution would not repeal the Blaine Amendment, just put that question to voters.
Let's be clear. A green light would give a chance for the people of Idaho to decide if they want to repeal this amendment or not, or this part of the Constitution. It's called the Blaine Amendment. It's not an amendment. It's part of our Constitution. A green light shows that we are ready as a state to get rid of this state-sanctioned religious discrimination. A red light says that we're okay with state-sanctioned religious discrimination.
Now, Republican Representative Brent Crane cautioned against what she said just there, impugning anyone's honor or assuming motives for a no vote or a red light. And while he voted yes and the bill got a majority of support, it failed because it did not get a supermajority, that is 2/3 majority. Supporters of the Blaine Amendment say it's always been an important safeguard of the separation of church and state, so it remains for now. Hunter?
Okay, we've talked about this in the past. This is now the future, I guess you'd say. They've talked about it. Yeah. So it didn't get the supermajority. Majority supported, though. So is it closer this year than in years past, per se? Yeah,
last time it was tried, 2024, didn't even make it out of committee, so it did get much further this time around.
Still stopped.
Maybe they'll try again this session. Maybe they'll try next year. We'll see.
They have a tendency of repeating things, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it once.
If they're getting a little further, you can understand why.
Yeah. All right. Justin, thank you. A governor's appointment withdrawn, a confirmation vote canceled, and now questions about political speech. A longtime member of the Idaho Human Rights Commission says her service ended after social media posts on her personal account. Abby Wilt spoke to her, and while she didn't feel comfortable going on camera at this time, she says she's hurt by the governor.
I served on the Idaho Commission, on the Human Rights Commission, since the 90s.
Estella Zamora has served the state for 30 years.
I have had the opportunity to work with some amazing humans.
But February 2nd, she was removed from her position. She says because of social media posts advocating against anti-immigration views.
I was in no way representing the commission with any of those posts. It was on my own personal page.
Her posts say things like Trump move ICE out of Minnesota and shares Boise anti-ICE rallies. On January 28th, Zamora came before the State Senate Affairs Committee to state why she wanted to be reappointed to the commission.
I am passionate about everyone being treated respectfully with dignity and be given opportunity to work in the state, to live in the state.
Your background certainly lends itself to offering a unique perspective on this commission, so appreciate your willingness to serve. We will vote on your appointment on Friday.
But Zamora says that vote didn't happen.
I got the call from the director again saying that the governor had withdrawn my name and that the committee was not going to be allowed to vote. Wow. And he said, I got a letter. And did you get that letter? And I said, no, I haven't received anything. And so he said, I'll forward this to you. So that is how I got notified.
That letter was signed by the governor's chief of staff and says, quote, the purpose of this letter is to inform you that the governor has withdrawn his appointment of you to the Idaho Human Rights Commission. The withdrawal of your appointment concludes your service on the commission, effective immediately.
I am on the commission, and part of that role is to assist in protecting people's rights and their right to assemble, their right to speak, their right, all of their rights. So, unfortunately, it seems like mine was taken away in the process.
Right before Zamora's scheduled vote, Idaho Senator Kelly Anthon reshared a post criticizing Zamora, saying, quote, we cannot have an activist openly opposed to law and order serving on any taxpayer-funded commission in our state. Anthon retweeted that, saying, quote, not going to happen. This appointment will not move forward in the Idaho Senate. He has not answered my request for comment.
Human rights are my passion.
Zamora says she was hurt that she has never heard directly from the governor. After more than 3 decades of service, she says she just wanted to keep helping.
I believe in people, and I believe we have a lot of good people, but unfortunately there's some bad people out there that are hurting others, and that is what I can't accept.
And I've reached out to the governor's office 4 times in the past week to hear their side of this. I have not received an answer back. And Hunter, I do want to note that removal letter does not exactly state why she was fired. It doesn't mention her social media. So that's why we really need to hear from the governor to hear exactly why she was removed. Something we'll continue to follow.
On that note, did she have anywhere in her contract that she could not post any political content, maybe even join rallies or anything along those lines when it comes to social media, in person?
Yeah, Hunter, I asked her about that. I was like, was there anything in writing that you signed that said, you know, I cannot post on my personal social media? She said no. She said she was not aware of any writing like that for the commission. So she said that that was something she wasn't aware of.
Okay, she's not aware of it. Governor could have that answer if we were to get a response.
Yes, exactly.
All right, Abby, thank you. Well, this afternoon, the ACLU of Idaho announced it is suing ICE along with several police agencies involved in a raid that happened in Wilder. Before we break that down, let's give you some background. According to a federal criminal complaint in February 2025, federal agents received a tip about illegal gambling tied to horse races at the arena there. In June, there was a post with a betting sheet filled out with names and large wagers. In late August, according to that complaint, an undercover agent went to a horse race at the arena and said they witnessed betting careers with backpacks full of cash. Then in September, a judge signed a warrant. Then comes in October, charges were filed, and it coincided with a public horse race. That raid caused chaos for families and spectators who were there that day, and it's now at the center of serious questions about whether those actions crossed constitutional lines, because more than just the 5 people who were arrested and charged were involved. I caught up with Christian Lopez, who took a deep dive into the lawsuit and what the ACLU is hoping to accomplish here. Christian, so ACLU Idaho, or the American Civil Liberties Union, they are filing a lawsuit. You've looked into this lawsuit, so who are they suing and why?
ACLU is representing these families who are suing federal, local law enforcement agencies because of the way that they were treated during the Wilder raids back in October. And so this lawsuit was just announced today, and they're representing 3 plaintiff families, but they're hoping to get class action status to be able to represent everyone who was detained that day. And we're talking hundreds, like near 400 people.
There were many violent tactics used in Wilder on October 19th, including zip tying folks for hours on end, throwing folks to the ground, firing rubber bullets. ICE and local law enforcement came in violent and aggressive from the start, and there's just no justification for that. There's no excuse for the violence that was used against children and families, and that's why we're demanding accountability for that.
What they're saying is basically they were held for hours. They weren't able to do things like use the bathroom. They weren't able to get food or water. Moms weren't able to take care of their babies. So that's some of the things that we're seeing in this lawsuit. It's the way that they were treated from the moment that these agents got to the racetrack for these 4 hours.
What entities are they suing?
So there are a lot on this lawsuit. A few of them are ICE, FBI. There's Nampa and Caldwell Police Departments in this as well, Canyon County Sheriff's Office, but there are a lot listed in this lawsuit.
They claim that a warrant was improperly used. I want you to break that down because obviously it involved a lot of people at the Wilder situation.
So basically what this lawsuit says is that this warrant was meant for the 4 or 5 people who were involved in this illegal gambling, and they said that they used this warrant to be able to come and detain these hundreds of people who weren't involved with the illegal gambling.
Also, discrimination is another claim in this as well, right?
Yeah, when you read through the lawsuit, you can see that it says basically that they were looking at people's skin tones. So they were assuming that people with lighter skin tones were U.S. citizens or had lawful status, and whereas people with darker skin, they were assuming that these people were not U.S. citizens.
A lot is involved in this lawsuit. This is also a first for ACLU Idaho, is that correct?
Yeah, they tell us that this is the first time they're suing ICE.
Another claim that's in this lawsuit, hitting quotas of people who were detained, is that right?
The lawsuit says that the agents who arrived, local and federal law enforcement officers, they had a mission to hit this quota. That is what the lawsuit is claiming.
And I just remember our coverage, you know, it was busy and kind of chaotic in those moments. What are the next steps in this?
Basically, the ACLU says that a case like this can take years to resolve. Right now, they are working to get class action status so that they can represent all the hundreds of people who were detained. We're talking about 400 people who were detained during all those hours. So they're hoping that they get class action status. And they also want a judge to rule this, the way that this was handled, as unconstitutional.
I do want to mention this lawsuit was released at 2 o'clock today. Christian has reached out to the parties on the other side of this lawsuit, and we are still waiting to hear back on their response. Idaho's major airport is flying into a major milestone. Ahead of the celebration, a look at how it's evolved over a century of getting travelers where they need to go. When you take a trip out of Boise, flying can come with a lot of emotions. There's anticipation, pressure, plans that can't wait. There's somewhere to go and something waiting for you when you get there. But when you fly back, there is this distinct feeling. The Idaho mountains come into view, the runway lines are all there, and suddenly you can say, we're finally home. Well, this year, the Boise Airport is marking 100 years since its very first flight. And to understand why this place feels so much like home, you have to go back to where it all began. Before Boise had jet bridges, baggage claim, before TSA, it didn't even have an airstrip. Back in 1926, aviation pioneer Walter Varney cleared land south of the Boise River, right where Boise State now stands, and launched the city's first airmail route. There was just one pilot with one engine and a bag of mail. That flight cut a nearly 2-day journey down to just 4 hours and put Boise on the aviation map. It didn't take long for the airport to outgrow that first home.
So Boise Junior College had been leasing space on the north side of the river. And when this opportunity arose, they relocated to the south bank and built their first administrative building and, added some dormitories and classrooms over time. And so eventually the use of that airstrip, it ceased. And so in 1936, thereabouts, the decision was made to officially relocate the Boise Airport to Gowan Field.
Over time, the airport grew but remained a small hub. In 1930, Varney Airlines was sold to United Airlines. By the mid-1930s, Boise was growing.
When I look back on how we've more than doubled the number of passengers that we're serving in our community, I would have not, when I started on my first day in my wildest dreams, thought that this is where we would be today, double the size, having done these huge expansion projects.
But in the last decade alone, passenger traffic has grown by more than 70%, pushing Boise from that small hub into a medium-sized airport. Last year, more than 5 million people passed through these doors, and that growth is visible everywhere. New parking garages, a rental car center, and soon, an entirely new concourse.
Where rental cars are parking today is where aircraft will be parking in the future.
For airport planners, that growth comes with a challenge on how to expand without losing the feeling that people love.
And the goal with the project is not to make Boise more complicated or bigger. It's to keep Boise the way that it is and offer the same level of service that passengers have come to know and expect from the Boise Airport.
We know it does feel like home when we get here, but also making a sense of place here. So if it's your first time coming to the Boise Airport, we want to leave this lasting impression. So we're really trying to pay attention to some of those features in the new concourse to be able to give that experience of like, I have arrived at the City of Trees.
Future projects include building Concourse A, expanding baggage systems, and increasing infrastructure designed to carry Boise into the next generation with room for millions more passengers.
Group 2, welcome aboard.
But airport leaders say no matter how big it gets, this place still means something deeply personal.
Just to see the amount of growth and change that's happened over the 20 plus years since my first time traveling through the Boise Airport, it's really pretty shocking, but also exciting. And I think as an airport, we really want to be on the leading edge so that we can meet the passenger demands, knowing that it's not just about getting from point A to point B. Airports have really become this kind of third space or this place where passengers are looking for more than just getting on an airplane. And so we want to be able to deliver that experience to our passengers and our community.
Because for Idahoans, the Boise Airport isn't just where the trips begin. It's where they end, where families reunite, where home finally comes into view. The Boise Airport has spent the last 100 years doing one thing really well: bringing people home.
Our intent is to keep the things that people love about the Boise Airport and make it even better. And so yes, I think the Boise Airport of the past would be very pleased with the Boise Airport of the present and the future.
And that centennial milestone is coming up fast. On April 6th, the Boise Airport kicks off a 100-year celebration since that very first flight. And we will be marking it with a special show right here on the 208. We're going to be digging deeper into the history, the stories, and of course, the future of the airport. Let's get to your 411 now. An inmate who's been on Idaho's death row for more than 20 years died yesterday. The Idaho Department of Corrections says 54-year-old Eric Hall died from natural causes. Hall was serving a death sentence for 2 first-degree murder convictions in Ada County. Investigators used DNA evidence to link Hall to both crimes in the early 2000s. And we have an update to a story we first told you about 4 years ago. The Idaho Supreme Court ruled today in favor of St. Luke's health system, rejecting an appeal from a man named Diego Rodriguez, who challenged an injunction barring him from defaming the hospital. The case stems from a days-long protest outside of St. Luke's in March of 2022 involving Rodriguez and anti-government activist Ammon Bundy. The protest centered on Rodriguez's grandson, who Child Protective Services took into their custody due to imminent health concerns. In 2023, a jury ordered Rodriguez and Bundy to pay more than $50 million in damages for defamation. A permanent injunction was also issued prohibiting Rodriguez from making additional defamatory statements or harassing St. Luke's employees. In today's ruling, the court noted Rodriguez, who represented himself on the appeal, failed to present any fact-based arguments. And that's the 411 on the 208.
Well, we have been enjoying another really beautiful late winter day across the region. Clear skies overhead, temperatures in the 50s in the Treasure Valley right now, low 40s over in McCall, 33 currently in McCall, just below 40 in Sun Valley. It's been some beautiful bluebird conditions for skiers and boarders today. I am still anticipating the clouds that we talked about yesterday to move into the picture. They're just taking a little bit longer than we had expected. So overnight, cloud cover comes in. We stay dry until early tomorrow morning. There is a system way down to our south. Already you can see it is pumping some moisture that's turning into precipitation across northern Nevada. That will be on our doorstep by about 3 or 4 in the morning. So commute time tomorrow, we may have a couple raindrops on the windshield, maybe a wintry mix in some of our colder spots in the valleys, but this is not a big snowmaker of a system. No accumulation for the lower elevations. We could see 1 to 2 inches in our central mountain locations south of Long Valley. I'm not seeing any accumulation potential really for places like McCall, Donnelly, and Cascade. I don't think the precipitation reaches that far north, and it's pretty much over and done with by tomorrow afternoon. So a little bit of a damp morning, otherwise pretty pleasant for the day tomorrow. We'll wake up to temperatures in the mid-30s, so a few degrees above freezing across the lower elevations, and we will cool a touch tomorrow as that system comes in. Highs will cap in those mid to upper 40s. We're back up into the 50s though on Thursday in Boise, and that's where we stay through the weekend and into President's Day next Monday.
Looking at your comments, we have Sandy who says, thank you for covering the story about the removal of the lady who was the head of the Human Rights Commission. I've been following this story as it seems she was expressing First Amendment rights. You are not alone. Sandy Cecil from Meridian also said he's upset, saying that Brad Little didn't want to connect with her after 30 years of service. It's interesting to see, and again, we would like to hear from the governor about this one. All right, Jack in Boise says, in my professional career, I traveled overseas a lot. My favorite memories are touching down in Boise, home at last. I agree. When I wasn't living in Idaho for that short span of a couple of years, it was so nice to get back home and be like, yeah, this is my place. Okay, then we have Bill who says, Justin, I'm glad to see no tie. Keep up the good work. Also, not the only comment about the tie. He surprised me again today, you guys. It's been fun, though. It's been fun. We love it. All right, see you guys later.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app.